There is a distinct, quiet heartbreak that every gardener knows all too well. You step out into your backyard garden on a crisp spring morning, holding your cup of coffee, expecting to see the vibrant, rapid growth of your young cucumber plants. Instead, you are greeted by a sight that makes your stomach sink. The leaves, which should be a deep, lush green, are looking pale, sickly, and distinctly yellow around the edges. The stems are thin and spindly, and the plants seem completely frozen in time, refusing to grow even a fraction of an inch. When this happens, the knee-jerk reaction for many backyard growers is to run to the nearest garden center and grab the strongest chemical fertilizer they can find. They drench the soil in synthetic nitrogen, hoping for a quick fix. But most gardeners don't know this. Dumping heavy chemical fertilizers onto a struggling, stressed plant can actually do far more harm than good. In fact, it can shock the already compromised root system, leading to root burn, permanent stunting, or even the death of your precious plants. To solve this problem, we first have to understand what is actually happening beneath the soil. Slow cucumber growth and yellowing leaves are rarely just a simple case of nutrient deficiency that can be solved by throwing random chemicals at the plant. More often than not, this stagnation is a direct result of environmental stress in a sleeping soil ecosystem. Cucumbers are notoriously sensitive tropical plants. They thrive in warmth, moisture, and rich living soil. When nighttime temperatures take a dip, specifically dropping below 50 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, the entire vascular system of the cucumber plant begins to shut down. At these low temperatures, the plant's roots enter a semi-dormant state. They lose their ability to draw up essential nutrients, particularly phosphorus and nitrogen, from the ground. Even if your soil is packed with organic matter, the plant simply cannot access it because its biological pumps have slowed to a crawl. Combine those cool nights with uneven watering or compacted lifeless soil, and you have a recipe for disaster. The soil microbes go dormant, the roots starve, and the leaves begin to yellow as the plant desperately pulls nutrients from its older foliage to keep its growing tips alive. What happened next surprised me when I first encountered this issue years ago. An old-timer gardener in my community looked at my struggling, yellowing cucumbers, smiled, and told me to put away the commercial fertilizers. Instead, he pointed me toward my kitchen pantry. He told me that the key to reviving stalled plants wasn't to feed the plant directly, but to wake up the sleeping biological life in the soil. He introduced me to a simple, centuries-old homesteading secret that uses two basic kitchen staples to completely transform the soil rhizosphere. When I applied this natural solution for the first time, the results became visible just days later. The pale, papery leaves began to deepen into a rich, dark forest green, and the vines started throwing out new tendrils with an intensity I had never seen before. Here is where the real secret begins. To wake up a stalled plant, we need to activate the soil's microbiome. The powerhouse ingredient behind this natural remedy is biological yeast. Whether you use active dry yeast from a packet or a block of fresh baker's yeast, you are introducing billions of beneficial, single-celled microorganisms, specifically Saccharomyces cerevisiae, into your garden. Yeast is not a chemical, it is a living fungus. When we introduce yeast to the soil, it doesn't just sit there. It immediately begins to ferment, secreting a complex cocktail of enzymes, B-complex vitamins, amino acids, and phytohormones like auxins and cytokinins. These natural compounds are absolute magic for plant roots. They stimulate rapid cell division, encouraging the plant to grow a massive network of fine, white feeder roots. At the same time, the yeast acts as a catalyst, waking up the native beneficial bacteria and fungi already residing in your garden soil. These native microbes begin breaking down locked-up organic matter, turning unavailable minerals into a highly absorbable, liquid buffet for your plants. To create this biological supercharger, we must start with the perfect environment for our yeast to wake up. This is the step many people skip, and it makes all the difference between a highly active biofertilizer and a useless bucket of cloudy water. You must begin with exactly 1 liter of clean, warm water. The temperature of this water is absolutely critical. It needs to be between 86 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. which is roughly 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. Why is this temperature range so non-negotiable? Yeast is a living organism, and like all living things, it is highly sensitive to its environment. If your water is too cold, say, straight from the garden hose, the yeast will remain dormant, clump up, and fail to activate. On the other hand, if your water is too hot, you will literally cook and kill the beneficial microorganisms before they ever touch your soil. A good rule of thumb is that the water should feel comfortably warm to the touch, like a baby's bath water. Once you have your warm water ready, it is time to add the yeast. You will need about 10 grams of active dry yeast, which translates to roughly 3 level teaspoons. If you prefer to use fresh yeast, or if that is what you have on hand in your refrigerator, you can substitute the dry yeast with 100 grams of fresh yeast. Now, to get these microbes working at peak performance, they need an energy source. This is where ordinary granulated white sugar comes into play. Add 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar directly into the warm water along with the yeast. The sugar acts as a fast-burning fuel. The yeast cells will greedily consume this sugar, using the energy to multiply rapidly and begin the fermentation process. As they ferment, they release carbon dioxide and beneficial enzymes that will eventually stimulate the biological activity of your garden soil. Using a clean wooden spoon or a whisk, stir the mixture thoroughly for about 1 full minute. You want to ensure that both the yeast and the sugar are completely dissolved, leaving no dry clumps floating on the surface. Once fully mixed, place the container in a warm, dark, and draft-free spot in your home or greenhouse. Let it sit undisturbed for 1.5 to 2 hours. During this window, you will notice a thick, frothy head of foam beginning to form on top of the liquid, accompanied by a rich, pleasant, bread-like aroma. This is the visual and olfactory proof that your beneficial microorganisms are alive, active, and ready to go to work. Once the fermentation period is complete, you are left with a highly concentrated, biologically active yeast stock solution, but you cannot pour this concentrate directly onto your plants. Because it is so potent, it must be diluted properly to ensure it delivers a gentle, steady stream of stimulation to the root systems rather than overwhelming them. For standard, established plants that are just showing mild signs of slow growth, the general dilution ratio is 1 liter of your fermented stock solution mixed with 5 to 10 liters of warm water. However, if your plants are very young, fragile, or highly stressed by a sudden cold snap, you want to take an even gentler approach. In these delicate cases, I prefer to use a highly diluted ratio, just 100 milliliters of the yeast stock solution mixed into 1 liter of warm water. This milder concentration provides a gentle, encouraging nudge to the young root systems, allowing them to expand and strengthen steadily without any risk of shock. When diluting your solution, there is one golden rule you must never forget. Always use warm water, ideally around 77 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, or 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. If you pour your warm, active yeast stock into a bucket of freezing cold well water, you will instantly shock the microorganisms, causing them to go dormant or die. Keeping the water warm ensures the biological effectiveness of the solution remains fully intact from the mixing bucket to the soil. Give the diluted mixture a thorough stir to ensure the yeast cells are evenly suspended throughout the water. Now let's talk about application, because the way you apply this biofertilizer is just as important as the recipe itself. If you simply pour this liquid onto dry, compacted ground, the vast majority of it will run off the surface, evaporating into the air or pooling in areas where the roots can't even reach it. To prevent this, we must prepare the soil first. Think of dry garden soil as a completely dried out kitchen sponge. If you pour water onto a bone-dry sponge, the liquid just beads up and rolls off the sides. But if the sponge is already slightly damp, it instantly draws in and holds on to any new moisture. Your garden soil behaves exactly the same way. Before you apply a single drop of your yeast solution, take a small hand fork and very gently loosen the top half-inch of soil around the base of your cucumber plants. Be incredibly careful not to dig too deep, as cucumbers have shallow, delicate root systems that are easily damaged. Loosening the crust breaks up any hard soil tension. Next, water the soil around the plants thoroughly with clean, warm water. This pre-watering opens up the microscopic pore spaces within the soil structure, creating a welcoming, moist pathway for your biological fertilizer to penetrate deep into the root zone. With the soil pre-moistened and beautifully receptive, you are ready for the final, transformative step. Never pour the fertilizer directly onto the main stem of the plant. The main stem is not designed to absorb nutrients, and keeping it constantly wet can invite fungal diseases like damping off or stem rot. Instead, focus your application on the active root zone. This zone is typically located in a ring around the plant, about 4 to 8 inches, or 10 to 20 centimeters, away from the main base. This is precisely where the plant's fine, microscopic feeder roots are concentrated. These tiny root hairs are the hard workers of the plant, responsible for drawing up over 90% of its water and nutrition. For each individual cucumber plant, gently pour about 0.5 to 1 liter of the diluted yeast solution into this active root zone. This volume is the sweet spot. Applying too little won't deliver enough biological activity to make a lasting difference, while drenching the soil with too much liquid can temporarily displace the oxygen in the soil pores, suffocating the roots. To get the absolute best results, follow this simple 3-step ritual. First, moisten the soil with warm water. Second, wait a few minutes for that water to soak deep into the earth. And third, slowly pour your activated yeast solution around the root zone, allowing it to sink deep down where the roots can immediately interact with the active microbes. What happens next in the days following this application is nothing short of a miracle of nature. Within just 3 to 5 days, you will start to see a dramatic shift. The pale, yellowing leaves will begin to deepen in color as chlorophyll production skyrockets, fueled by the sudden influx of bioavailable nutrients. You will notice the stems thickening and new, vibrant green growth will begin to push out from the growing tips. Beneath the surface, the root system is undergoing a massive explosion of growth, branching out to create a robust foundation that will support heavy fruit production later in the season. The beauty of this simple organic method is that it is not a one-trick pony reserved only for cucumbers. This exact same yeast and sugar recipe works wonders for other heavy-feeding members of the nightshade family, including tomatoes, bell peppers, hot peppers, and eggplants, especially during their early, critical stages of growth. By focusing on feeding the soil biology rather than just forcing chemical growth, you are building a resilient, living ecosystem in your garden beds that will pay dividends all season long. If your garden has been struggling, or if a sudden cold snap has left your plants looking tired and yellow, I highly encourage you to skip the chemical aisle and try this simple, time-tested homestead secret. It is incredibly rewarding to watch your plants spring back to life using nothing more than a few pantry staples. If you found this guide helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more deep dive organic gardening secrets, and share this video with a fellow gardener who might be struggling with yellowing plants. I would love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below sharing your own experiences with natural fertilizers, or ask any questions you might have about this process. Wishing you all an incredibly abundant, green, and bountiful harvest this season. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next one.